Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday evening. It is 9 o'clock. Time for a Tuesday night blether. But first, as always, a little music. Enjoy. Thank you for whoever bought me a coffee. Enjoy the music.
We are all the heirs to Scotland, as a nation proud we stand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let a flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. To the world we bid a welcome in 1,000 different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
Good evening, folks. I hope you're all safe, well, and comfy and cozy. I always forget that. Thank you, Rory. Please press the like button. They tell me it's supposed to help the channel. So, I hope you all had a good weekend. I enjoyed my evening out on Saturday with the family. Really, really good. And I haven't been in that restaurant in the town. Oh, I couldn't even tell you. Wouldn't even guess how long it's been since I was in that restaurant. And it's all changed, of course. But the food was nice. The food was very nice, and it wasn't too busy, so we could actually hear each other speak, which is always a good thing. It's one of the, for me, it's one of the major ingredients when I go out with people, either friends or relatives like that, is conversation. Nice meal, conversation, couple of drinks. Brilliant. And so that's what we had. Very nice. Toffee's suggesting. I heard John was dancing on the tables in the bars in Paisley on Saturday with his top off, waving his tie above his head. Yeah. Roller disco. Oh dear. Yeah, it's a bit of a pain in the butt, isn't it, Doc? But that is, to me, that's a very important part of being with people socially like that. I mean, if we were all getting together, that's what I would be looking for. You know, a nice place, not busy, nice food, few drinks, and well, we know the conversation would be good. Conversation's good here, so it's bound to be good in real life, and we need to somehow get that sorted out before it gets too late in the day. But yeah, that's it's one of the things I've always enjoyed my whole life. Not always been able to, you know, take part in that, but it's a nice thing if you can arrange it. And I really love to arrange it for not just party members, but people, regular folk here, chat members, shall we say. That'd be nice. We could meet up, and if it was a private place, it would even be better because we could talk freely, and I would enjoy that because you all know, you've heard me say enough times that there are certain things that I cannot say on an open forum like this. Certain topics have to be either heavily edited or just not discussed at all. Toffee saying they purposely play music too loud in bars so you can't chat properly and end up buying more drinks. Now, you're absolutely right, Toffee. That's part and parcel of the destruction, the deliberate destruction of pubs in this country because it was seen for what it was, and what it was a place where essentially men got together and talked about football, women, and politics. And I've seen this throughout my life. I've watched the destruction, the deliberate destruction of pubs, not just in this town, of course, but everywhere. And it started with encouraging women into the pubs. The idea of, well, I'm going in my town here in Greenock, but I'm going to assume that it's much the same for wherever you live. And what you had was bars, and the bars who were able to converted some part of the pub into a so-called lounge. They put carpets down and slightly better, more comfortable seats, and that allowed them to put prices up. And it also encouraged young men to bring their girlfriends into the pub, and that started the downfall, because then it was mind your language, cut the swearing down, and all of this. But before that started, the bar staff changed. It changed from, and again, I can't speak for England, I'm not an expert on how the bars were in England, but certainly in Scotland, the bar staff were always men. My granddad was one. He did that his whole working life. And then that began to get eroded, so women started becoming bar staff. And all of that, well, they did, Toffee. They were brought in. They were brought in deliberately. I think you're right, Rory. I didn't see your comment there. I'm too busy yakking. Toffee will lately be too young to remember a time before jukebox. And again, the ruination of the pub, if you think about it, is somebody goes up, puts money in a jukebox, and wants to hear a record that they like, which is fair enough, you know. However, there'll be people sitting in there who don't want to hear that record, perhaps don't like that record. And then someone else will go up and put on another record, and another section of the pub won't like that, and so on and so forth. And then when that began to lose its hold on the people in the pub, when Sky Television came along, that's what they try to use, and it worked successfully for a while, to get crowds to come into the pub, because the thing they had was the football. And at that early stage, not many working class houses had or could afford the Sky Television. And it was very unreliable anyway in the beginning. A bit of bad weather and the picture was going. And it cost them a fortune, because if your signal went down, you could make them so they couldn't charge you for the time that it was down. So obviously, one of the first things they did is they changed their contracts so that even if the signal went down, you still had to pay for it. So it could go down for days on end and you'd still have to pay for that, a service that you didn't get. But when that improved, of course, it took people out of pubs and kept them in the house and took them, as my friends who go to football tell me, had an adverse effect on football crowds as well. Ticket prices soared up. I'm just catching up in your comments there, folks. Toffee saying a local pub to me still has a bar and a lounge, and the ladies never go into the bar. It's a bit of a relic of a pub, a dying establishment. Well, it certainly is. And I saw a lot of destruction in my time in the pubs because up until the smoking ban came in, I went regularly to a pub 2 or 3 times a week. Myself and my big pal Jerry and my lady Laura and Lorraine, the four of us used to go out regularly. But you'd hear the arguments, especially in the bar, when football was on, and then the bar staff, again women, they would change the channel. They wanted to see some soap opera that was on that was clashing with the football, and they wouldn't change it back. I swear to God, that's what they did. They would change the channel and say, if you don't like it, go elsewhere. And the men put up with that. I couldn't believe it, but that's what they did. They put up with it. They just never said a word and just stood there. Joni Rotten, good evening. Join in chat. I'd certainly agree entirely with that, Bass. Men of all ages and walks of life deserve space, or safe spaces, as you're calling it, for just being a man, because we're different. No big deal. I agree entirely. Agree entirely. Well, I think what he means is, I think he just means a place where men can go and women don't go there. I think that's all he means. And I agree. What's this toffee saying? There's pubs in North Liverpool where people still smoke. There are certain areas where there isn't much respect for the law. Good for them, is what I say. Good for them. I mean, not that I would be smoking now, as you know. I mean, I gave it up. Uh, such is life. But I would still defend people's right. If I had my way, I'd make it entirely up to the license holder whether they want to allow smoking in the premises or not. I think it should have been a choice. Julia, good evening. Everyone smokes in our local too. Good. But the reason that wasn't allowed, you see, in my view, it wasn't allowed because what they were frightened of is that all the smokers would go to the bars that allowed smoking and they would take their pals who might not be smokers with them. And the bars that wouldn't allow smoking would end up being half empty or totally empty and eventually go out of business. So, to prop up these bars, they made it mandatory for everyone. That's my own view. If you think about it, well, maybe you don't agree with me. I want to see what Duck's saying here. When they brought in the smoking ban, periodically half the table of people left to go outside to have a ciggy. Correct, Duck. Correct. But my point was I've been outside, says Doberman, for ages smoking my shit. Then all these normie ciggy smokers turned up. Very good. I like it. What was I going to say? Yeah. So I used to gripe that I would be in the bar. So I'm drinking, give me a double vodka and fresh orange, please. Right? So this is what I've ordered up. My pal Jerry's ordering up some malt whiskey. Good evening, Edmund. And someone else in the bar is ordering vodka and a fresh orange. Okay? But my point is, I'm going to pay X amount for that drink. And at some point, I'm going to go outside to light a cigarette and smoke a cigarette. But I've still got to pay the same price as a person who's not going outside. And that's where it becomes, in my view, unfair. So if you're a smoker, you should not be paying the same price as a non-smoker because they're not going out, but you are. And I've argued this. Not that I expected to get anywhere with it, but just to make a point, I would argue with them. That why should I pay the same amount of money as someone who's never gone outside, but I know I am? And then we take into consideration the weather. Now, if we had decent weather when we went to Spain, wasn't a problem. We had a lovely evening, you could sit outside and it wasn't a problem. But we don't have Mediterranean weather. We have Scottish or British weather. Don't lie, says Trophy. Your triple was a gay coffee liqueur with an umbrella in it. Oh dear. I like coffee like your mine is the umbrella. Oh, good. So that was always my point. But that would be too. What I was looking for would be too even-handed. And then you had all the lies that were told, as usual. The yeah, when all this smoking stops, the place will be all done up and it'll smell lovely and everything will be great. I'm still waiting at any of the pubs in this town decorating. Julia, I believe that if everyone was still oh bubbling COVID wouldn't have fooled so many people. Rory saying my old regiment's bar was named Stirtling Room. Women weren't allowed in there. They had to sit in the Queen's room until you brought them a drink. The world was more gentlemanly back then. I haven't been in the pub since the band came in. And that's the reason. I just refuse to pay the same amount of money to stand outside. Well, obviously, since last year when I took unwell, obviously I was unfit to get near a pub. But it would be the same now, obviously, because I'm not smoking. My attitude wouldn't change. I still think it's unfair to people who do smoke. I really do. And if I had my way, I would change it. I would change the rules so that license holders can make their own mind up and let the pubs fight it out for the customers. Never forget, I mean, I think the figure was something like 1,000 in pubs a week to begin with were shutting down. And that's probably true as well, Gavin. I haven't been, as I say, I haven't been in a pub well, since the band came in. Pubs are way too expensive these days, he's saying. He's probably right. Well, there you are. Well, that's information to me, Toffee. I don't know about the rest of the folk. 8 pints of Kronenberg. And Kronenberg's not a bad brand for £12 in the off license near me. I'm not paying pub prices. Quite right. That's not bad at all. That's just what over a pound a can. Oh, you're saying pints. It could be a pint can. Bag of cracks, a tenner. Now, there you go. Inflation of putting it in a glass. What else has the pub got to offer? Except loud music. And not everybody wants the loud music. £6 for 4-pint cans, says Toffee. Good value, John. And as you said, Kronenberg isn't a bad beer. No, it's not a bad beer. It's not exactly Tennant's, is it? Christ almighty, that's awful. But Kronenberg, yeah, it's all right. I've had a few pints of that in my time. Kronenberg, yeah. £6 for 4. Well, that's just a little over £1 each then. Cronin, my beer of choice in the pubbing days of the 90s, says Gavin. Yeah, it's all right. I think it's all right. Mr. Q's, now the Murrayfield Bar in Edinburgh, Doverman. We put a lesbian sex show on a Saturday sometimes back in the day. I never know whether to believe it or not. It's getting knocked down, he's saying. I don't know whether you're winding me up or not. Better than Heineken. I quite liked Heineken, believe it or not. Oh, Kestrel. Not quite as good as Kestrel. Super strength, it says Toffee. Or those other 15% homeless alcoholic beers. Word. I don't think I've ever tried that Kestrel beer, Toffee. No, I don't think I have. I used to drink Heineken back when late 60s, early 70s. But I'm not a big beer drinker. I never have been. Not a big fan of Heineken personally, says Toffee. Gives me heartburn. Well, any beer gives me heartburn if I were to drink too much of it. As I say, I'm not a big drinker of beer. Never have been. No, so it has. What's happened to you? That's unusual. Hmm. Seem to have lost me. Hmm. What's happened to you? There we go. I'm back. So there you go. Seems to be all right now. I had to go out of the live stream and then come back in again. Yeah, that seems to be it. Don't know what caused that. Bit strange. Ghosts in the machine, yeah. Ghosts in the machine, right enough, Toffee. So anyway, I think, getting back to what we were talking about there, I think if we could do a survey on it, but I don't think it would be required. I think more and more people drink at home now. I think that was part of what a lot of people learned with the lockdowns. To stay in, they learned to stay in, were forced to stay in, and probably learned that golden lesson that it was cheaper to drink at home than go to the pub. And you could just do the same thing, couldn't you, if you had, football getting piped into your house. You can get your mates over, get a few cans of beer, and enjoy the game at home with your pals. And I don't think that the population in pubs have ever recovered from that. They're not likely to either. Because that is the truth of the matter. It is cheaper to drink at home, more convenient. Rory is asking, do you know where the expression a pint of heavy comes from? I have only ever heard that in Scotland. A pint of heavy. I think it just comes, does it not, from the amount of heavy beer that was once drunk in Scotland. When I went out into the wide world, having been thrown out of school at the age of 15, and went into a pub, obviously underage. So far as I know, there was only two types of beer you could get on tap: heavy beer and light beer. Sensum had the answer to take coffee. Doesn't surprise me. That's as much as I can add to the conversation. That used to be only two types of beer, or was it three? Heavy and light. Yeah, it was heavy and light. Pale ale. That used to be a bottle beer. Well, that's as much as I know, Gavin. When I started, what would that be? In 1960, what? 61, 62. It was pint of heavy or a pint of light, but light was not really drunk by too many folk. Pale ale, so far as I know, or I'm aware of, pale ale was a bottle beer. I enjoyed pale ale. It was a McEwen pale ale was a nice drink. Came in a bottle. But as far as I know, that's where that would come from. Pint of heavy is simply asking for a pint of beer. Lager came a wee bit later on, Gavin, believe it or not. And Tennant's brought that in, lager. And it became very, very popular for long enough. Bass is saying red, stout, cider, old brown, and lager. No. Tennant's lager was on tap. Some pubs, not very many around here anyway, but some of them did have on tap the Guinness beer. Sensen thinks I'm a tramp for drinking lager. He thinks lager is Nat's piss. Jeez. I think there's an awful lot of very poor beers, to be honest. It's just my opinion on the matter, but I am no connoisseur of beers. That's for sure. But McEwen's Pale Ale was a nice drink. As I say, it came in a bottle. I would take one of them now and then. I used to drink a few bottle beers in those days. I'm talking about now when I'm a teenager and I'm in the group, and we would go for a drink before we went off to the venue to play. Bass Ale still around? I think it is, to be honest. I don't know if it's still around in pubs, but I'm sure you can still buy it. Well, that doesn't surprise me, Treble, considering where you are. Pubs where I live are more like bistros, yeah, whatever the. Well, that comes from America, does it not? Yeah, I always enjoyed when I went to England to go in an English pub. I thought they were good. I really did. Oh, the English pubs always seem to be, to me, seem to be more civilised than the Scottish pubs. Scottish pubs were always, in my view, certainly when I was a teenager, were only ever about one thing: getting into the pub and getting drunk as quickly as possible. That didn't seem to be the attitude in England. Good evening, Uncle. I've certainly not heard of that one, Edmund. Spitfire is a fine beer. Just so you can catch up, Edmund, Anglo, we're talking about beers. I always enjoyed English pubs. I did. I'm going to be honest about it. I never had any problem with them. I liked them. Because it didn't seem to have, I mean, they may have had that attitude, I just never picked up on it. But they just never seemed to have that attitude of let's get drunk as quickly as possible. Maybe it was just a teenage thing, I don't know. But I never detected it in the atmosphere in the English pubs. And I quite enjoy the English bitter, is it? Yeah. bitter, pint of bitter. Quite enjoyed that. But as I say, I'm no connoisseur when it comes to alcohol, especially beer. I've tried a few German beers and they're really, really nice. Oh, I'd certainly go with that. Tremley. Country pubs are still lovely, absolutely. Absolutely. And when I was, this this tells you right away how times have changed. When I had a motorbike, I was in and out of a few country pubs. Uh, Never stopped us drinking, being on the bikes. Not that we're rip roaring drunk, of course. Couple of a couple of pints, but still. Um, Country pubs, yeah. English pubs in general, I thought they were fine. And of course, in those days, I'm talking about 60s, 70s now. The idea of going into a pub, ordering a pint of beer and food, cooked food, was a real novelty. I thought it was great. It just has never caught on up here. We just don't have that history for it. I mean, it's not as though the pubs don't do it, they do, but it's not a thing in the way that it's always been uh, an event in an English pub. It's one of the differences. I always characterised Scottish pubs as a place where men went to get drunk, especially on a Friday and Saturday night. That's what they were there for. Toffee, apart from Scottish and Irish people, you'll potentially have trouble in the rougher pubs in Liverpool unless you're a local. Wouldn't recommend going to a pub in Croxteth if you're not a Scouser. Oh, I get that. I mean that, but you're talking about a pretty large city, Toffee, that's artificially divided into areas and officially divided into areas. Good evening, William. I have a pub in my village, says Rory, which has a priest hole in it. Presumably, he could hide there after a few pints when the Protestants came for him during the Reformation. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it would be a hidey hole for sweet, sweet Protestants. Good evening, William. Sweet, sweet Protestants. I don't know that Anglo. I've never, I've never heard of it. I don't think it, and I certainly haven't seen it. A Polish lager, 5%, not too strong, not too weak. Oh, they make some really nice lagers on the continent. Absolutely, without a doubt. My old pal Jerry was a connoisseur of alcoholic drinks. The local team got beat 1-0 in the Scottish Cup. My son tells me. Last 5 minutes or so, they got a goal scored against them. That was that. Treble M is telling us I buy Russian beer. I don't think I've ever tried Russian beer, Treble M. And I don't drink in the house because if I did, I'd be drinking on my own, and I'm not keen on that idea. More in the jam tarts. Yeah, that was right. That's who beat them. And I assume you're talking about Hearts. I assume that's who it is. Well, that explains it, Treble M. We have a Russian shop nearby. You nip in there, Treble M, for all the latest news from the homeland. Hear what's going on. No, as I say, there was a bar in Glasgow that specialised in Russian drinks, but as I say, it's a lifetime since we were out socialising. As you get older, things change, and well, lockdowns, I've got a lot to answer for. Toffee, there's a few Polski shops in the city, and they're always good value. That's good. Oh, and by the way, folks, I I don't know who it was. Was it Doberman that gave me it? I subbed to the two channels that were recommended to me: an alternative view of history and interviews of wives and girlfriends and mums of men who died in the Second War, German men. So, thanks for that. It was very refreshing to hear another side. Very refreshing. So I'll take my time and watch my way through that. I always appreciate that when people will recommend things. So yeah, I wonder if they'll ever let Galloway make his maiden speech. They haven't allowed him to. They keep blocking him. I'm sure he'll eventually get there. And we got a new member of the party. We got a new member, a new person joined up, which is good. And that always helps. And because of the success he's had, Galloway in his election. He's telling everyone, I assume he's telling the truth, that his party has trebled in size. Just like I always said, the people are there, they just need someone to vote for. So we will watch that space carefully and see how it develops. That's what I say. So there we go. And remember, the film review this month is Pan's Labyrinth. If you want to get hold of it, and if you haven't seen it, and watch along and take part. Yeah, Gavin, you're absolutely right, and he does not make a secret of it. And it's interesting, don't you think, folks, that the Labour Party has been exposed for the shills they are. All this money that they've taken from the Jewish lobby. Keir Hardie, John McLean, people like that, they'll be turning in their graves at what's going on. Toffee's giving us more info. Wife and children, the same as he is. You see, I've got this. I would make it a policy of the party. I think it is unofficially a policy of the party that should we ever come to power, that anyone with a dual nationality cannot hold any public office in this country. The USA would do well to adopt that as a policy for them. If I had my way, it would be a policy in this country. I'm watching, I'm watching, Toffee, but thanks for the nudge. I appreciate it, I do. It's when you study other countries and you see what is allowed and what is not allowed, it's quite uh, revealing. I'm going to assume, Bass, you've seen it. I like Del Toro's movies. Pan's Labyrinth has a dark undertone. No, obviously, Doberman has seen it. Yeah, as I think I told you last week when Sensum announced it, that I bought it on the strength of film review. And that's not normally what I do, but I did buy it on Kermot when he was working for the BBC. Buck's saying moral relativism is a good way to reach people, I reckon. I, I'm not sure, Duck. I, I know you won't come on, but it'd be nice if you came on and explained exactly what you mean by that. Surely morals. Good evening, Ludwig. Surely morals are absolutes, are they not? Or am I wrong? Sup, says Doberman. Well, when I look at other countries, and I'm not talking about the USA, I'm talking about countries in the other part of the world. I mean, there are many countries where if you go there and live, you're not allowed to buy a piece of land. Here's a brutal statement here from Doberman. Morals are luxury ideas. The only moral is survival. I'm not sure that I would classify a moral as a survival trait. Survival is certainly up there as a necessity. We survive because we feel we must. Ludwig's saying certain moral questions inevitably pose a dilemma. Yeah, yeah. Right, I need to hang on to this so it does run away. Take the position of car taxes. Make yourself the arbiter of the rule in the example, give me the money or else. People recognize how it is wrong when you change who the arbiter is, John. You're a magnificent storyteller, John, says Mr. Rodney Johnston. Well, what's the point then of holding something to be the right thing to do and something is the wrong thing to do? What is the difference, and where does this come from? This idea. Right. Let's see what Rory's got. I stood up. I stood as a UKIP candidate 3 times, campaigning against proportional representation. I may not agree with Galloway, but if he's the start of breaking up the two-party system, good for him. I'm still thinking over what Rory's saying. Proportional representation. Hang on, don't want to let that get away either. In short, says Duck, wrong if it is by your say so. So wrong by their say so. Consistency. In reality, it is somehow correct just by their say so. Mr. Johnston is asking me, am I a nationalist or a socialist? Tricky question. I'm actually both. I'm a nationalist and a socialist. And I don't see any contradiction between the two positions. I don't see how you can be a nationalist, care for your people, if you're not prepared to create structures and systems that help the people, promote the people, and uplift the people. I would say a good example of that would be the National Health Service. Now, I know it's got many flaws. I'm aware of that. But I'd rather have that socialist system in place than not have it. You see, that's a toxic brand there, Rory. That's the trouble. It's been made toxic. But anyone who has read our growing manifesto would see that it's a socialist policies. The policies are there to protect the poor and the weak and the vulnerable. It's not by any means, of course, complete, this document. So there's many things that we'd need to wait until we came to power. You know, as I've often said, quite openly, the National Health Service, for example, is only half what it should be. It also needs the ability in this country to make our own drugs. We need that ability in this country to be free of copyrights, etc., etc. And I would set that up. Now, that's a long-term policy, but it's vital for the National Health Service. As I've said before, I can give a simple example of how that should work. Aspirin, for example, cannot be copyrighted because it's a natural product. It comes from the bark of trees. Certain trees gives out this gooey, white gooey fluid, which is aspirin. So that cannot be copyrighted. But if we had the labs, and we've certainly got the personnel to film, that can be turned into the drug as we know it. And with those labs in operation, they would be finding our products for our National Health Service, which we would then be able to control the cost of. That's what's always been missing, in my view, about the National Health Service. We're held to ransom by the pharmacy companies, and we need to take that. We need to take control of that, and that's the way to do it. Start it from scratch. Use PhDs from all the universities in the land and set it up. It would cost a lot of money, of course it will, and it will take a lot of time, of course it will. It's a long-term project. But that's what we need in this country, long-term projects that have proper, well-paid, fruitful jobs, and that would be one section that would fulfill that. And you can't have that unless you're prepared to take public money and spend it on those kind of projects, which is what we call socialism. I agree, Mr. Johnson. The government guaranteeing work is better for the people than guaranteeing an income for nothing. Absolutely. It is all sorts of psychological advantages to the people. Because in the kind of situation I'm talking, and I'm only talking about one area, it would be like any other factory ultimately. You would have the high enders, the brains, if you like, the PhDs coming out of university, working in the labs, developing, hopefully, cures and what have you, but at least developing medicines. And then you would have a production line set up where these things are made. And that would be a semi-skilled form of employment. And then you would get unskilled employment. So there's a whole range of employment situations there, going from unskilled all the way up to research workers. Then you've got the transport service, delivering the products to all the various outlets. You know, not just hospitals, but obviously health centres, what is now called pharmacy shops. I'd rather they went back to chemists. That was a downgrading. They used to be occupied. You couldn't have a chemist shop in this country at one time. When I was a boy, that's what you had. You had to have a full, proper degree in chemistry before you could operate a chemist shop. Because in those days, the chemist in the shop actually made the medicines up from scratch. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessary today. I don't know. But what we definitely need is we definitely need our own pharmacy industry controlled by us. Without a doubt, I've held this view for 30 odd years. And any time I've spoken to any of the people who work in hospitals, whenever I get the opportunity, they will agree in principle, although it's more conversational, it's not a formal situation when I'm putting it to them. Just the same as I think we've got the answer, our party's got the answer about staff retention. Again, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I could sit here and give it out to you. So we're speaking the same language here, Mr. Johnson. Absolutely. I want to see trams back in this country. Not just one in Edinburgh. I want to see them back in the cities because these modern trams are superb. But before we get into that, we need to get German companies over here to teach us how to make them again because we don't have that skill anymore. It's been destroyed, that skill. We need to learn that skill again. The men need to learn that, how to do that again. Same with the rail. We need to learn that skill again. And that should all be funded by the government. That should all be owned by the state. That's all socialism. But I don't care if it rubs people up the wrong way. That's what's needed. You will not get anything like that ever getting done by sheer capitalism. It just will never happen. Because you've got to put vast sums of money out before you'll ever get any money back. And I'm not sure that you'll ever get money back from some of these enterprises. But we should own. The state, the people should own water, electricity, gas. And we should own public transport. As I say, I would like, if it's at all possible, and I think it is to some extent possible, to reduce cars in the city, so long as, and this is the key element here, so long as there is an excellent public transport service already in place, so that people going to their work don't have a hassle about getting a bus or a subway. There's plenty of public transport available all the time. And that should help people have the confidence to leave the car at home and say, right, we'll use the underground, or we'll use the tram system, or whatever's in place. Why not have both in place? And when I say this, I'm thinking of Glasgow rather than Edinburgh when I'm thinking this. It's got a pretty decent subway system if you know how to use it. If you added on to that a really good tram service, these modern trams, it would by default discourage the use of cars. It won't do away with them, of course not. but it will dramatically reduce it once people learn to have confidence in the system, that the system will be there and will be working. Same as we need to put people back into the railway services. We need more rail carriages so that you don't have this massive overcrowding at between 8 and 9 in the morning, people going to work. I mean, when I was running up and down to Glasgow University, I was appalled at the amount of trains that were getting put off. And why was that? The voice would come over the loudspeaker. There's wet leaves on the line. Christ almighty, wet leaves on the line is going to stop the railway from running. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. Well, it never used to be that way, folks, let me assure you. So what I'm saying is there is plenty of room for improvement on public transport, and it should belong to the state in behalf of the people. And what you would do that? How would you do that? Well, you'd wait for these contracts to come to an end. Like with the railway, you have to come to an end, and then you don't issue them again. So you don't waste public money by buying them out. You just wait patiently, and that gives you time to prepare for when the state takes over. Because we need to build, and there is more work. Build foundries where the transport carriages need to be built, and the what do you call it? The trams as well. They need to be designed and built. That needs to come first. Somebody has to build all that as well. More employment. You have to have confidence in your people, have to have confidence in your country, and absolutely have confidence in your future. What else is there? Is everybody going to start opening up a coffee shop and selling coffee? Been a lot of nonsense. We need to make things. We need to own things as a country, as a people, as a nation. And that's socialism. That's the branch of socialism that belongs with nationalism. You can't separate them. You just cannot separate them. And again, I would agree with you. Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. The state and nothing but the state. The state is the nation is the state. A folk, a people moving forward together, metaphorically, spiritually. Each with the same broad vision for the future, for the children and their children and their children. For that takes confidence in the people. You need to have confidence in your people, and you need to have confidence in your country. And I've got that confidence. I know we can do it. We did it before. We can do it again. And we can learn from the past. And we don't make the mistakes of the past. And I'm old enough. I lived through that socialism, that communist socialism that we took on. I lived through it and I saw how corrupting it was. And it was corrupting, especially the railway. Railway became incredibly corrupt. The guys were corrupt. These are working class men. You don't have a ticket. Just go through. Didn't turn up to work. So what? Doesn't matter. Why? Because I'm going to get paid anyway. Lots and lots of corruption. I'm not saying that it was only the men at the bottom, the men on the platform, the men on the railway trains. No, it wasn't. Well, there you go. Oh, that's there. My father worked on the railway. Didn't work that long in it. He was near the end of his life at that point. But it went on. The nationalised railway went on, and it was part of my life as a teenager. Very few people ever bought a ticket. They just walked on, and nobody bothered. And you can't run a public service like that. That's the kind of socialism that doesn't work. People have to understand that there has to be a balance. They put up rail fares in the east of England. It says Edmund. The model I have, the socialist model I have, and we'll use the railways as an example. Now, I don't know what the prices are because I rarely use the railway myself. However, whatever the real ticket price is, let us say from here, Greenock, to Glasgow, whatever that price is, right? That needs to cover the cost of running the train up that line. Ideally, it should be making a profit. Now, if you're doing that with all the lines, you have to get all the lines to the point when they're all making a profit. And the people who work on the railway have to come to understand, properly understand, that it's in their best interest to do a good job, to not take days off willy-nilly, to not let people through without a ticket. Because once the railway has been lifted to a point when it's making a profit, then that profit margin can be divided in such a way that it can then be used to pay for new rolling stock. And if anything is left over, then that left over can be divided among those who work on the railway service itself. Now that model is already in action in retail stores. Now it's a form of socialism, but it isn't that old-fashioned Marxist type socialism, which breeds corruption as it did. But this kind of socialism will work because it's already working. Once you teach the people in the job that it's in their interest to make sure that they do a good job, that you don't let people away with things, that people pay their ticket, etc., etc., etc. But they have to get something in return for all of that. And what they would get in return, and should be getting in return, is a seat on the train, not standing, going to their work because there isn't enough carriages. There should be more trains if there can't be more carriages. No, you don't want a train with 50 carriages on it. You need two trains with 25 carriages or whatever. What I'm saying is the service has to be improved. And when people see that the service is being improved, they'll be better able, I think, to pay the ticket price when they realise that the money they're paying is being fed back in to the railway service itself, rather than being siphoned off at the top, as it is now. And the idea that the stations and the lines are owned separately is just ridiculous. That was all about property grabbing, getting huge lumps of very valuable city property into private hands. All has to be put to an end. All of it. And if done properly, people would see the benefit. And every industry that's publicly owned needs to be run in the same way. If only. If only, Rory. My pal Gavin and everyone else, Gavin's brought it up to my attention, but my pal from Glasgow, him and his wife, when they go on holiday, they very often use the railway system. They go from Glasgow to Paris. And when they're in France, they use the railway system. And they tell me they all are clean, reliable, courteous, modern, fast, and as I say, on time. Why is our train service not like that? Well, we all know the answers. We've all got bits of the answers. Again, this is what you're talking about. This is what I'm talking about. But there's so much of this that you just can't sit here and just talk about it forever. William, I used to get the train to Darlington when joining the army, and from Edinburgh I would get GNER train. They had a smoking carriage, and boy did it stink. I can imagine that. I remember those days. I'm not talking about returning to the past here, folks. I'm not. I'm talking about taking the present and pushing it into the future by reinvesting in our own people again. And only a nationalist government will do that. Because only a nationalist government will have confidence in their people. And I have confidence in our people. That once you give them a good shake and show them that they're better off in a job than lying in their bed till 4 in the afternoon, half out of their mind on drugs. It's not a life, a waste of life. But that needs to be in charge, to have power, and not to take nonsense and listen to nonsense. And one of the things that we need to investigate is, are all the coal mines that were flooded by Margaret Thatcher, are they gone? Are they permanently gone, or can they be? Can any of them be recovered? Now I don't know, but that's the sort of thing we need to find out. We've got hundreds and hundreds of years of coal beneath our feet, folks. My dad was Royal Scots. I was Scots DG. My father was RSM at HQ Scotland. I was just a trooper. Okie doke, Linda. We could do better than that, Mr. Johnston. We could do that, but we could do better. We could build ships, cruise liners, couple of cruise liners, and use them for holidays or holiday destinations or both. It just takes imagination. It just takes confidence. Confidence in your people. Confidence in the future that you see. Well, there you go. Listen to what Gavin's saying. I used to love a fortnight in Amsterdam. Get trains into Denmark, Germany, France, and Belgium. We could have supersonic train travel. My friend tells me that most of these trains in Europe are doing the 100 mile an hour. It's nothing special over there. The trouble here in this country is there's a large section of people who are so used to being in charge politically, financially, and think that they are entitled to have their own way about all matters. That whenever they don't get their own way, they do their best to break the ideas that are being put forward. These 6 columnists have to be put aside. Don't know about that, William, to be honest with you. I don't know. You may well be right. I'm not going to say otherwise. Well, that's what I'm driving at, Mr. Johnston. There is a large section of the UK that wants to suck all the wealth. There always has been. That's why we ended up with the National Health Service the way it is, because the Tories never wanted it, never supported it, and did their best to scupper it. That's always been the case in this country. Always. Bass. The whole Western world has enough gas and oil for generations and still develop, what is that, thorium based salt power plants, allow to make transfer to allow transfer to a cleaner world. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, it's just as you said, there are these individuals and groups who do their best to scupper anything that smacks of a socialist idea, whether it be a national socialist idea or a socialist idea. I'm not for the old-fashioned socialism. I've seen it in action, and I can assure you, on experience alone, it doesn't work. Yeah, I know. This is another thing that, you know, it'd be great to be sitting around someplace, us, I'm talking about, and thrash this out. What do they mean when they say the West? Who is this, the West? I don't believe in the West as a concept, says Doberman. That's judo nonsense. Europe is not the West. America is the West. Let the West fail. I'm not sure either. I'm not sure what the West is. And if it, What's it got to do with Europe? What have we got to do with Europe? We can be allied to some extent with Europe, but not sucked into it as in the EU. That needs to that EU needs to fall apart forever. It's just the Soviet Union again. Unelected people doing what? Earning how much? Who knows? Who are they? Who knows? What do they do? Who knows? Yeah. Get rid of them. What are they but a parasite? A parasite that bureaucratic thinking invented, sucked on like parasites onto countries, sucking them dry, and then dictating to them. Who the hell are these people? It's like the UN, as I've said all my life. How'd you get a job in it? I don't know. I don't know anybody who knows. I do away with the whole damn lot of them. What do we need them for? The UN, if you didn't know this is a historical fact, so you can check it up. The UN was being put together. Let me think now. In 1943, when it was quite obvious that Germany had lost the war, they were beginning to put the UN together because its predecessor, the League of Nations, was brought down by the fact that Adolf Hitler withdrew Germany from it. He saw it for what it was. I see it as an unnecessary bureaucracy. And we have seen in the last few years what it's trying to do. It's trying to become that world government. And again, ask yourself, who the hell are these people? How do they get a job? I have no idea. I have no idea how it works. Europe's the same. This EU thing needs to go away forever. Who are these people? Where do they come from? Who gives them the right to say and do what they do? They're stirring up war with Russia, for goodness sake. Don't see any of them getting out to fight with a gun. I'm going to agree with that. And then I'm going to agree with that. Yeah, Julianne, that was America that made us give up Concord because they wouldn't allow it to land in the US. And then they took the concepts, just like the Harrier jump jet, did the same thing with that. Well, that's what I'm saying. It was formed. Its first meetings to form this thing, this obscenity, was in San Francisco, 1943. He was paid for by one of William's favourite people, the the oil folk. And I agree with that as well. Just look at what happened during the Second World War. All the state secrets, all the things that were important, all the things that should have been kept to ourselves was given away by Churchill to the US. Rockefeller, thank you, William. That was the name I was struggling for. That's who funded this UN. That was who bought the land and paid for the building. This tells you something. If you didn't know that, check it up if you don't believe me. I'm sure William has talked about it on his shows. He talks about them, well, he used to talk about them quite a lot, so he'll probably know. Yeah, the big families. That's who put it together. Oh, Clifford Foreskins. This is a new name to me. Good evening. Have you ever been to the US? Yes, I have. You're banned. I've been twice to the US. Well, it was the Rockefellers and some of the others that put it together. What gives it any authority but itself? That's all it is. It gives itself authority. Football highlights, jeez, oh, Doberman. It's amazing. I've told you this before. I pay no heed to it. I would pay no heed to it if I was in charge. I don't respect them. Who are they? Who gave them any authority but themselves? That's who. So I don't think anyone should pay attention to them. And as for the EU, it should just be dismantled. Think about it. Every 6 months, it moves its whole headquarters from one place to the other place. I would just give it all a fond farewell. Not even a fond farewell, just a farewell. On your bike, guys. You've got no authority here in this country. That's what I would say to them. anything, any forms or agreements that's been signed in the past is no longer valid. I went to America in 1993. I enjoyed America, what I saw of it. I thought the people were great, courteous, friendly, very uneducated, I might add. They don't know very much, but that's not their fault. Well, I suppose it is in a sense, but I enjoyed it, and of course, I enjoy the good weather. So I was taken with the good weather because it was all the western states I was in: Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, California. So the weather was great, and I loved that. That suits me, having that kind of weather. Did you see any fatties? Oh, yeah, I did. I did indeed. Well, the first time I was in the US, I was there for 6 weeks. And the second time I was there for 2 weeks. And I travelled around via the Greyhound bus. To say the ordinary people are great. It's like any other country that I've discovered. It's not the people that are the problem, it's the political class that's the problem. They're the ones that cause all the problems. It's the same in America. People are terrific. The, the political class they're the upstarts. And I think one of the main reasons why you've got so many fat people, people who are grossly overweight, is because of the size of the food. I remember I was in a place called Flagstaff, and it was like a cafe. Looked like a cafe. It was a cafe. And I made a mistake. I ordered a beef sandwich, and a cup of coffee. I was expecting a beef sandwich. That's not what I got. What I got was a big piece of bread on a plate, big plate, covered with a big piece of bread, and on top of that was a steak and a big giant cup of coffee. That's what they called beef sandwich. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously to you, but me, I couldn't eat all of that. It's far too much for me. Oh, thanks, Rory. Did you do any birds over there? asked asks Clifford at Foreskins. I'm beginning to think Foreskins is a euphemism for foreskin. So I ain't going to answer that question. And besides, it's 11 o'clock. I think they've got a lot to do with it, Bass, Kellogg's. But similarly on the quantity that you get served is enormous. An Indian tribe. Well, that's what I was looking for, an Indian tribe. So yeah, you get huge quantities of everything, food-wise, like I just described. I thought I was buying a sandwich when I wasn't. I was buying a steak. Uh, Beyond my ability to eat it all. Well, again, yeah, it's what they're used to. You know, you get regular, and then you get giant, you get jumbo giant, and all this kind of nonsense. And you're right, it just is an enormous size of foods. Never heard of that one. You may well be right. The Americans like to eat the way we like to drink. You may well be right. And some of the things are beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Some of the food stuffs that they serve you up is just gorgeous. That's for sure. I mean, I remember once sitting down. This is true, you know, and then I'll finish up. Right, was in this motel, and I ordered up bacon and eggs and grits and pancakes. And to my great surprise, the plate came out with the bacon and eggs and all that, right? Mushrooms and the pancakes come out at the same time. There was 10 pancakes on a plate and a big jug of syrup to put over your pancakes. And no one was more surprised than me when I finished the meal. I went to Alaska in the early 2020s. Wow. Yeah, you need to come on and tell us about that. That sounds interesting. It's not a place. I was there for a reason. In Florida in the early 90s. You buy my book and you'll find out why I was there. uh, yeah, look what you can buy at the supermarkets now. You can buy all that stuff now here. But that's because we're. No, I wasn't. I was there to find a place that had been described to me by my wife before she died, she described a place that had appeared to her a few times in her dreams, and she wanted to be buried there. And so when she died, I went looking for this place. That's why I was there. And that's why I was there for 6 weeks. So anyway, that's another story, unless you buy my book. Oops. So there you go. I'll bring on the music now. Well, don't feel bad, Mr. Johnston. It's over 30 years ago now. I've learned to live with it a long time ago. It was very traumatic at the time, as you can imagine. But that's why I was there. And that's what I found. The ordinary people were great. Yeah, it is a love story, Doran. You're leaving us. So am I. Aye, it's a love story. It's cool. Absolutely. So anyway, there's the music queued up. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. It's a nice compliment. It is. Uh, like I always say, folks, adios, au revoir, cheerio, and until Friday evening, goodbye for now. You all take care, look after yourself, and I'll speak to you soon. So let's get the music rolling. Enjoy the music.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides a fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the
Rory's given the link to the book.
Usher dreams of you and me.
About my search for Helen Street.
Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees.
All together
but
now.
love's much more than we can know. We are one small globe in the eternal flow. Melodies of long ago,
I'll do that.
songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, past of consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony.
All together now.
But we're much more,
So much more
than we can
than we can
know.
ever possibly know.
We are one small globe
But an important glow
in the eternal flow. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small globe in the eternal flow.
Okay, folks, you take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye just now.